Cleared for takeoff runway 6
Hey
Nomad
everybody,
Niner
Chinook
6.
Driver here. We are currently sitting on the runway in Trenton, New Jersey. Going to take a quick jump over to LaGuardia, which is less than about 70 nautical miles. Want to give you guys a quick instrument flight here from Trenton to New York City, or LaGuardia Airport. So let's take a look at what we got, and we'll get set up for the flight. Again, I am Chinook Driver. If you couldn't tell from the name, I was a former Army helicopter pilot, and I flew Chinook helicopters, of course, for about 10 years, and getting back into the aviation community by hopping into Flight Sim 2020 here, which I've been really enjoying. And I want to share what I do remember of my aviation knowledge, with you guys. So let's get set up for departure here. So the first thing I want to do is take a look at my heading bug. I like to set it up for my final runway heading, which would be 040. You can see that heading bug moving over there. 040. Eventually we'll be turning on our flight director, autopilot, yaw damper, and our nav. We'll use GPS to get there, and then our instrument landing system to do our final approach. Let's take a look at our control display unit here. We can pull up the airport, which is going to be Kilo Lima Golf Alpha for LaGuardia. So KLGA, we can hit enter there. And we're going to want some frequencies. Alright, ILS runway, nope, don't want that. ILS runway 4, we're going to want to put that into nav 1. And I always like to put it into the secondary nav as well. So we've got that. Procedures. We're going to want to make sure that we have ILS 4 selected and loaded. So we've got that set. Don't have to worry about departure options. Alright, so our arrival's set. We've got, I'll bring up our VFR flight plan here. Just show you a general route of flight. Going to be an eastern turnout. It's going to be real quick here. Eastern turnout, then northeast, then right up along the east side of Manhattan there, coming up through Brooklyn. We'll have JFK, we'll have Newark, and then we'll go straight into LaGuardia. I will mess with the weather settings to do a little sightseeing on the way. But for now, we'll take off in these less than ideal conditions here. As you can see, it's let's take a look at what we're looking at for weather here. Got clouds from 1,600 feet. Let's bring that down to 500 feet. Move those up. That up, and then we'll bring that down. Just messing with the sliders here a little bit. Alright, so let's bring that down to 150 feet. That way we'll pop into the clouds real quick. Oh, that got ugly real fast, huh? I like that you can mess around with the weather and really create the conditions that you want. So 70% cloud coverage. The clouds are all the way down to 150 feet, all the way up to 36,000 feet. So we'll be going in the clouds real quick. Last thing we want to do is get our altitude selected. Should be going to around 7,000 feet. You can see the as I move the altitude up, it goes into our altitude window there. Select 7,000 feet. And then once we turn on the autopilot, we can climb up. Alright, I think we are ready to go. Last thing is we'll get our heaters on just in case we get any icing conditions. We shouldn't. It's summertime and we're not going too high, but always good to have it on rather than not. Alrighty, I think we're ready to go. So let's get a good view outside of the cockpit here. I think that's kind of a, yeah, it's a good view there. Alright, let's disengage the parking brake. And let's roll. We're cleared for takeoff. Increasing power. Make sure we stay close on the center line here. See the airspeed's coming alive. Once we get up to about 90 knots, I'll rotate. And there we go. Let's start rotating. Going to be in the clouds quickly here, so I want to make sure that we have a nice level attitude. Let's get the gear up. You can hear the gear coming up. And we'll bring our flaps up. Alright, got a good positive rate of climb. Let's start activating some of our automated systems here. Flight director, autopilot, yaw damper, and nav. And we can answer ATC now that we know we got a safe climb going.
123.8 Nomad 906.
Switching over to Philly departure.
Philadelphia departure Nomad 906 is at 1,300 feet, climbing 6,000 feet.
Nice, we're on 6,000
Philadelphia departure, continue to Romeo Bravo Victor as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
2992, that's already set in our windows. Alrighty. So let's set our vertical speed. Get that up to about 2,000 feet per minute. You can see that bug there shows about 2,100 feet per minute. Rate of climb, you can see on our display here that we're coming back on course. And we should be fully IMC now, which we are. Can't see anything at all. So we are fully instrument meteorological conditions. I think one of the things that maybe an individual that's not super familiar with the aviation terminology is there's a difference between IFR, which is an instrument flight flight plan, and IMC. So IFR, you can fly, you know, when it's clear blue and 22 and you can see, you know, forever and there's not a cloud in the sky. IMC is when there's actual instrument meteorological conditions, which means that you're flying in the clouds and relying on your instruments. So if you're flying IMC, you're going to be on an IFR flight plan. But if you're flying IFR, you don't necessarily have to be IMC. So there's a distinction there that can get confused sometimes, particularly if you're not super familiar with you know, the industry. Let's take a look at our GPS here. So we'll go to Romeo Bravo Victor, then make a turn to the northeast, then it's going to get real quick, real fast, because we don't have a long way to go. And this is a relatively quick aircraft. They're doing 224 knots ground speed, 180 indicated, and it'll be leveling off here shortly. So this will be a quick flight. Really just want to show the great instrument suite in this aircraft itself, and really kind of show how we can trust our instruments and fly an instrument landing system approach into LaGuardia. Once we get to Tykes or Minks, I'll reduce the cloud cover a little bit so we can do a little sightseeing, and then once we're back on ready for our approach, I'll increase the cloud cover again and do the full approach. So I always found, for me personally, that instrument flights were super rewarding, because it really teaches you to trust your instruments, because when you're IMC like this, you have no option other than to trust your instruments, right? It's great to have all this, you know, GPS and you know, the flight displays that show you where you are geographically. But ultimately, what you really have to trust is three things. It's your attitude indicator, it's your course deviation bar, and it's your altimeter, right? Those three, and also your airspeed indicator as well. But when it comes down to it, airspeed, altitude, heading, and attitude. That's what'll keep you alive and keep you flying. Everything else is secondary. All right. So you can see that our flight path is almost taking us directly onto that 040 heading. So we're not going to have too many turns here. We're going to be pretty much straight into LaGuardia here. Be approaching Tykes and then Minks. Once we hit Minks, I will reduce the cloud cover here and show you the little skyline in New York City a little bit.
New York Center on 118.975. Going to 118.975 Nomad 906. New York Center, Nomad 906, 6,000 feet. Nomad 906, New York Center, continue to Tykes as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
Okay, so we're clear to Tykes. Continue on course. Alright, let's reduce the coverage here a little bit. Or actually quite a bit. And let's take a look outside. Quite see New York yet because we got some of those clouds ahead of us, but it should start coming into view here quite shortly. Actually, if I...
Nomad 906, contact New York approach on 120.8. 120.8 for Nomad 906. New York approach, Nomad 906, 6,000 feet. Nomad 906, New York approach, continue to Minks as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
Alright, let's actually reduce the coverage all the way down to 0 there, given that doesn't get it all the way. Obviously, you'd never want to be intentionally flying through thunderstorms, but for entertainment purposes, we are today. And I'll tell you what, this game is graphically unbelievable. In case you're wondering, I'm currently running on a Intel 9700K. Overclocked to 5 gigahertz and a 2080 Ti. So even though I have a pretty high-end system here, Microsoft Flight Simulator kind of demands the most out of it. So I'll be interested to see once the 3000 series cards release supposedly next month what the benchmarks are. I'm sure a lot of people will be benchmarking on Microsoft Flight Simulator because it's one of the most graphically demanding games that there is out right now. I think it probably is the most. So we can start to see, let's take a look outside here. This should be the Verrazano Bridge right there. You can see Manhattan skyline coming into view. Governor's Island. Got good old Staten Island off our left there. Looks like some kind of boat or barge going. Oh no, that's just a little island there. And then Brooklyn, Queens to the north, and then the Bronx to the north of that. Got New Jersey on the west side there.
Nomad 906 descend and maintain 2,700 feet. Descend and maintain 2,700 feet, Nomad 906.
2,700. Fuel imbalance, not super worried about that. You can see that our fuel level's higher on our right tank than our left tank, but we're going to be at the airport here shortly, so not going to get overly worried about that. Alright, let's take a look at our GPS one last time here. Alright, we are getting pretty darn close to our approach path here, so take one last look at the city. And
Nomad 906, you are 16 miles southwest. Maintain present heading and altitude. Expect vectors ILS runway for approach.
acknowledge.
Maintain present heading and altitude. Expect vectors ILS runway for approach, Nomad 906.
And get one last look at the city there. Got the Statue of Liberty, Lower Manhattan, Midtown. You can see the Empire State Building, Freedom Tower. But it's time to get back into the clouds.
Nomad 906, you are 13 miles southwest of Laguardia. Maintain present heading and altitude. Contact tower on 118.7. Maintain present heading and altitude. Tower on 118.7, Nomad 906.
Okay, coming down to 2,700. Should be leveling off. Looks like it went through it a little bit. It should bring us back up.
Tower Nomad 906, 11 miles southwest inbound ILS runway for
Start
approach.
slowing down a little bit so we can get
Nomad 906 tower.
air cleared for the
Cleared
ILS.
ILS runway for approach. Altimeter 29.9, wind 284 at 51.
Nav 1.
Cleared ILS runway for approach, Nomad 906.
Okay. So, as we were talking to LaGuardia Tower there, I switched over to Nav 1 for our FMS source. You can see that our localizer is captured. Our glide slope is coming in. We should capture that as well. That green diamond there is the glide slope. So we should be looking for that GS to swap over to a solid green there. Yep, there we go. So we are coupled to the glide slope. We are coupled to the localizer, and we should be nice and set up to go into LaGuardia. Keep an eye on our altitude. Let's see, what is the bottom of the clouds? The bottom of the clouds are at 157. I'm going to bump that up just a little bit to 255.
Nomad 906, cleared to land runway 4. Wind
Okay, we're cleared to land.
51. Cleared to land runway 4, Nomad 906.
Alright, coming through 900 feet. LaGuardia is 5 miles out our front. We are on the glide path. Start seeing the ground come into sight there. Put our gear down, flaps up. Still don't have the runway threshold in sight. Looking for it, looking for it. Miles off our front now. These are about the most adverse conditions that you'd ever fly in. But that's why we get to do it in a simulator. Looks like we got the runway in sight here. I'm going to turn off our see the runway threshold. There we go. This would not be a fun approach if we were doing it in real life. Okay, let's get centered back up. We got plenty of runway here to work with, so take our time. And a little bit of a rough landing there, but most important thing, especially given these conditions, that we got on the ground safely. Alright, we'll turn off. Oh, that's inactive.
Nomad 906, contact ground on 121.7.
So we'd be contacting ground here if we were in real life, but moral of the story is let me set the parking brake. We were able to do a quick flight and a very, which the quicker flights are always the most tricky ones. We were able to use our instrument flight systems to get us to our destination.
Please acknowledge.
And ATC is not going to shut up. But ultimately, we used our instrument flight systems to get us safely on the ground. I would never advise doing anything like what we just did, particularly flying through thunderstorms and cloud bottoms at 200 feet. But it just proves that you can do it, and you can trust your instruments. So appreciate you sticking with me through the flight here. Again, I am Chinook Driver. Please feel free to leave comments. Let me know how I can improve the channel, and tell me what you want to see in future flights. Like, comment, subscribe, and really appreciate it. Thanks for coming along the ride. We'll see you next time.